Marginalised and stigmatised groups in society such as migrants, sex workers, homeless people and drug users are at particular risk of human rights violations during policing and security operations. Sonke Gender Justice and SWET, which is a Sex Worker Education and Advocacy Taskforce, commissioned research into police practices following high volumes of sex worker complaints. This recent study has uncovered police brutality on sex workers. Over half of the sex workers surveyed said they had to pay bribe to the police, and some also described repeated rapes and beatings by police. We look at the study now with Nosipho Vidima from SWET, and she joins us live from our studios in Sea Point. Nosipho, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm all right, Nosipho. Now, the report was commissioned due to high volumes of sex worker complaints, as I said, but this is not really a new phenomenon. We've had cases of this nature before. But this, of course, is evident enough that the status quo remains the same.
Yes, it's very evident that nothing has changed between the police officers and how they're treating the marginalized community, as you've talked about. It's not just only sex workers, though. It's people who use drugs, it's migrants, it's the LGBTI community at large. I think legislation was created in a way that it did not protect people that are marginalized, people that this broader society would see as living outside of the norms. Hence, we have so much brutality that is directed towards these groups when the police are trying to enforce such legislation and policies that exist within our country.
But can we really say this is a national picture? I know that the research was only conducted in some parts of Gauteng and in Mpumalanga. Does it paint the picture of what is happening nationally?
I would say it actually does paint the picture nationally, because this is not the first time that we're having such a report. Although this was a more focused study onto the cases in Mpumalanga and Gauteng, we had in the past couple of years been releasing a yearly report with the Women's Legal Center, which also showed 60% of the brutality towards sex workers being that of police officers.
And talk to us about the report and perhaps some of its recommendations and findings.
The recommendations obviously is to look into a much more broader human rights-based focused research on how we can change the status quo. That being said, there was a group that was formulated by certain organizations in 2017, and it's called the Positive Policing Partnership, and it's looking basically into going into the department itself, the SAPS, governmental level, local level, and even let's say institutional in the colleges. And with that as well, it brought about a partnership with the COC Netherlands, which is an LGBTI community, looking at how we can change the curriculum of the police officers so that they can understand the diversity that exists in the current in the current context that we're in, where we have the LGBTI community, we have sex workers, we have migrants, and we have people who use drugs, who are actually protected under the Constitution and should be afforded those rights.
And I'm looking at some of the recommendations here under your sex worker empowerment, is that you talk of documentation of sex worker human rights violations that has to be prioritized to ensure that such incidents are brought to light. Elaborate a little on this.
So you'll find that a lot of the cases that actually we come across, there's not enough data because there were not proper procedures that were followed while the arrests were happening. And if the procedures were followed and we have a document, nothing really goes to court. There are not enough prosecutions. And if there are prosecutions, they are not separated from the larger community, which means that we can't really take tab of how much is really going on within the SAPS towards sex workers.
Yeah.
If you ask the NPA as well to tell you how much of those people that were actually charged under the Sexual Offences Act, they really do not have the statistics. Nor do we have enough documentation of sex workers that have been raped by police officers, because it's actually very hard for a sex worker to step in to a police station and report that kind of crime. There's stigma, there's the fact that the police will try to protect each other. There's also the fact that you can't be really going to your perpetrator to seek help.
Nosipho, due to time constraints, we have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for coming through. Nosipho Vidima from SWET, which is Sex Worker Education and Advocacy Taskforce, of course, talking to us about this report where they basically talk to the brutality that sex workers have to go through or on a daily basis. We're taking a quick ad break. Your news at 8 will follow.